Dave, why was Rock Cena 2 not quite as strong?
I think the first, some matches, if it's a dream match, I think the first one is the one you remember. If it's a feud match and it's a good feud, I think it's the blow off is the one you remember. And this was more a dream match than a feud match. They tried to make it a feud match, but the dream match aspect of it was much stronger than the feud match aspect of it, I think. And just the fact Rock's first WrestleMania back was going to be a lot bigger than his second. And this was also his third year back because the first year it was The Rock on the show. So that's not new. The second year he's actually wrestling, which nobody ever expected they'd see. So that was big. The third year, it's like he wrestled last year and now he's wrestling again. It's big, but it's not as big.
Now, was it strange to you did it feel strange to you like it did to me? It felt to me to have Rock act like he was passing the torch to John Cena in this show. They do that scene where they raise each other's hands at the aisleway after the match, and Rock kind of acknowledges Cena, but he's passing the torch to a guy who had already been the top star in the company for years and years. It almost felt like years too late for that scene, but did it strike you as appropriate at all?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because every single time, this is another one, every single time The Rock would come out, okay, people loved The Rock. Do you remember anytime he said anything complimentary about John Cena, they turned on him? Here's the thing. And I mean, I hated when I talked about that, the original match Survivor Series when they did the tag team. And I said, like, it wasn't a good idea, okay? Number one, I thought that the idea of Rock's very first match should be at WrestleMania. But I wasn't that strong on that because your match at WrestleMania is going to be bigger than your match at Survivor Series. And it's a single and it's you know what I mean? And the other one can be a tune-up. And, that's not so bad. I mean, some people go, oh, they're going to ruin WrestleMania by him doing Survivor Series. Like, I didn't think that. But what I hated was the idea of him teaming with John Cena with no storyline reason. The one thing that Rock had when he came back that was why it worked the first year and why it worked the second year is that people knew what John Cena said about him. And, whether you agreed or you didn't agree, you can believe because you knew it wasn't a storyline when he said it. And it wasn't that if you're Dwayne Johnson and you've done all this and this punk comes in and says this, well, why don't you come back? You're either going to be one of two things. You're going to be a fan who just loves WWE so much, go, yeah, he's right, but believe that both guys don't like each other, or you're going to be the one who just goes like, what an asshole! I can't believe Brock's coming back to kick his ass. And even though it's a work, you want to believe. This was one that you want to believe. These other ones are just you can't believe them. You don't believe them. This one had enough seed. It's like Brett and Vince in a lot of ways.
You feel like there could be real tension, even though they're cooperating for a match, that there's tension there that's between them.
Right. And they did those promos. They did those promos to make you think that. I mean, they did all kinds of things that they're crossing each other up and double crossing each other on the promos, and they really didn't like each other. And I think people wanted to believe that these two guys didn't like each other. And when they didn't want Rock to acknowledge. It was like when you watch, any feud. And I mean, this, you could say this, and again, in any combat sport, whether it's boxing, MMA, whatever, where you have the match where, it's not the contrived. We know they're putting on a show to make us buy tickets. It's the one where it's so strong where you believe it because it's actually true. And then the fight's over, like Rashad Evans and Rampage, okay? It's like that one was so strong that you just don't want at the end to go, you know what? I really like this guy. You don't want that, right? Even though that match,
you want them to continue to hate each other because you feel like you've been taken for something of a ride if after the money's made and the match is over, they're friends again. Or they're friends. Right. You realize they were friends maybe all along and respected each other more than they let on. And that's what we see here in Rock raising Cena's hand. I think they could have achieved Cena getting his heat back without that extra touch that kind of diluted a lot of the stuff that had happened between them.
But Rock was a traditionalist, and that's what Rock wanted. Rock wanted on his – again, and when he did that match, that was not planned to be his retirement match because he was going to shoot the angle with Brock Lesnar the next day,
right.
But he He ended up and it may end up being his last match. I don't know if he's going to come back or not, but
he tore his abdomen in the match, right?
Yeah, he tore his ab, and then he tore his abductor. His muscles were tearing away throughout the whole match. Once he had the first injury, then the wheel started. He had a real bad next couple of weeks. Oh, God, did he have a bad next couple of weeks? But the thing was he came back because John Cena won. I mean, that's the whole mentality of where it was going to go. The traditional thing is at the end, I make the business better by losing to him and endorsing him and saying it's over and life is good. But the fans didn't want that. If they were actually two baby faces, and who could I compare this to? And I don't. Hogan Warrior's not even the right one.
Sean and Brett.
People didn't. Sean and Brett wouldn't.
That's the thing. People are always going to take sides, even if
Sean and Brett wouldn't have been the best one. It's more like if there's a match. God, it's like I'm. God, I'm trying to come up. I can't.
Brett and Davey at SummerSlam.
Brett and Davey at SummerSlam actually was fine. Yeah, because there was a grudge, but deep down you knew that they didn't hate each other. The one that I think of is Bruno and Pedro Morales. It's like they did an angle, but at the end it wasn't that strong. It was like, we're going to have a match. We're going to find out who's the better.
Right. When
it's over, they hug. It wasn't a big grudge match. It was just kind of like a once in a lifetime match. This is a grudge match. This people wanted. It's like with Austin and Vince. People really didn't want Austin and Vince to get back together. That was one that they took too strong. And this is another one. It's like, yeah, John Cena is supposed to be a babyface, but the people who are Rock fans, he's not a babyface to them. And they don't want Rock endorsing him. They want, perhaps, a little bit of an acknowledgement, maybe the old fist bump argument, you know what I mean? That was when with Ronda and Miesha Tate, and throwing in another MMA reference here, but with Ronda and Miesha Tate, when that match was over, and remember when Ronda didn't shake her hand?
Of course, yeah.
When it was over, okay? And all that. And I thought, there was a part of me when she didn't do that where I thought, God, the people are going to hate her, and they did. But I thought that it was good because it authenticated the grudge match aspect. Because everything that built up there, if they had hugged at the end, it would have been like, oh my God, you just worked us for 3 months, and it wouldn't, and it's not the right kind of work.
You don't come out of the match with electricity. You don't come out of the match with a feeling of, authenticity and unpredictability about you, which is important to maintain. And that's kind of squashed here. Like you said, people wanted Rock and Cena to hate each other. That's what they wanted this to be.
They didn't want them to make up, or if they did, it to be, because the reason I bring up the Ronda thing is that someone in UFC afterwards, we were talking about like that, and I don't know whose idea it was, but it was like, the handshake and the hug would have been terrible. And I think it was actually Ronda Rousey with hindsight, because I think she thought that she did the wrong thing. And she said, you know what, like shaking her hand would have been right, but maybe just kind of like a grudging fist bump and walk away.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I'm you can see I don't like her, but I'm not a poor sport.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, and I could see that with Cena and Rock in the sense of when it's all said and done, go in there and do like a fist bump and go their separate ways. The hug was too strong. Mm-hmm. The big endorsement is too strong, because the people who want Rock to pass the torch, they want him to pass him to Daniel Bryan or CM Punk or somebody else. Anyone but John Cena.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of CM Punk, he works Undertaker on this show, has a fantastic match with him. And, what role do you think the booking of this match played in CM Punk's unhappiness? We talked about it last week in the Jericho Punk positioning vis-a-vis Rock Cena, and as you were astute to point out, this is more of the show that's cited as kind of like the ground zero of CM Punk's frustration. It's a fantastic match. He busts his ass, gets a great match out of Undertaker, who was showing great physical limitations at this point in time. How did this factor in, do you think, to Punk's thought process about his future with the company?
Well, it was, of those straws, it wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was a straw.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, he thought that they should have, number one, he wanted to be in the main event, and he wanted to be a three-way. And I don't think that was the right move, and most people don't. That I think most people thought, and the show was better. I don't know if they put somebody else in there with Undertaker, you don't have that disappointment, because it would be, after those year after year of 4.5, 4 3/4 star Undertaker matches, you come in, and if it was somebody other than Punk, and the Undertaker he wasn't the same guy in that match that he was the year before. I mean, there was a big drop off. Everyone knew it, but Punk still had a phenomenal match with him. If you went in there and it was a match with somebody else, and it was just a so-so match, a lot of the mystique would have been gone. I mean, the streak's still there, but it's not the same. Punk kept the mystique going by that. It was the right thing for all concerned that he was in that position. I think the argument is that it should have gone on last, and they had more heat than Cena and Rock. I mean, they did. People were more interested. Cena and Rock was a little flat following them. They, in the people's eyes, that was the hot match on the show. And when people later, when Triple H later goes, well, you were the real main event, and I think it almost burned him more, because it's like, well, pay me like it. And of course, out of the, the top, whatever it is, the top 6 on that show, he was the 6th highest paid, while being told, you were the real main event. And yeah, that was, he said it when he did the podcast. I mean, that was something he brought up, and I'm sure it was one of the things that when the bitterness comes, it was another one.
And also in the show, we see the return to the WWE fray of one Brock Lesnar, who wrestles Triple H on this show. And it's interesting because the last time we had heard from Brock, Dave, he was flipping off Madison Square Garden at WrestleMania 20 as they showered him with "you sold out" chants after he'd landed on his head and almost killed himself the year before at WrestleMania, trying to give it his all. And now he's back, and it's a different world, and Brock Lesnar commands a different sort of leverage and attention. So what led to his return, and why was he such a big deal upon it?
Well, that was the UFC. And, I just remember the week of the Overeem fight, I kept hearing WWE's making him a ridiculous offer, $5 million offer, and it's like, what? And then he goes in the fight, and then he retires, and it's like, whoa. And I think at Vince's thing, I think that Vince, no matter what he says, how Vince is. I think that the idea of Vince, there's no WCW to steal from, and he doesn't want anyone from TNA. So, he'd get the biggest star from somebody. There he was. Plus, it was, maybe the right time for Brock to make the move. So it worked out good. Yeah, I don't know about the result of this match.
Oh, in terms of Brock Triple H, yeah. Well, Triple H had to go over just the way it had to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, but it was the wrong. It was really the wrong move. The John Cena move, on the first match back, that was the wrong move. That was really the wrong move. The first match back. I know why they did it. Their whole thing was there was only going to be one Brock and John Cena match. I mean, I was told they are only going to go once, and so John has to win, and then they're going to move on, because Vince had to prove that his top guy could beat the other top guy. That's just how it was.
Guy,
I mean, it's fucking. Yeah, and of course it's stupid, but that's what it was. Okay, but with Triple H, you didn't have that. With Triple H, there was no reason. When you're paying guys so much money, you didn't need to be at WrestleMania, unless it's to elevate somebody that's going to be your next big guy. And Triple H was not that. So there was, this result made no sense.
Now, Dave, wasn't part of the calculation, of course, Lesnar, for listeners unaware, makes his return to the WWE the night after WrestleMania 28, so the night after The Rock beats John Cena, gives him the F5, and he's in the company, and everyone's going crazy because he was such a big star and became an even bigger star after leaving. So he's there, and the very next month, at the next pay-per-view, the first available one, they have John Cena beat Brock Lesnar. A lot of heads are scratching. And you said it was, in part because Vince had to prove that his top guy could beat the UFC's top guy. Was there not also a concern, though, Dave, that the slightest thing could cause Brock Lesnar to pack his bags and quit? And I'll be damned if he's going to walk out before we at least get a little bit of steam on one of our key players off of beating him. Because I remember even that night at Extreme Rules, there was a bit of a backstage kerfluffle where he was going to walk out and, he's making overtures that he wasn't happy. So was that...
Well, because in his mind, that's because they double-crossed him on the finish. Because John Cena came up and did that promo that he wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah, after the match,
Cena was supposed to win and then go out on a stretcher. And that didn't happen. So he felt double-crossed, and their argument was that John went into business for himself, and we couldn't help it. And, who knows what the truth is, right? But, yes, I do believe that. I do believe that they didn't fully trust him, and that they needed the first thing when they signed him up in their mind. The first thing we got to do is have somebody from here beat him, and then we'll rebuild him later. Absolutely. And John and the guy had to be John. It had to be him. And
so after fractious, feelings hurt departure from a Brock Lesnar in 2004, here he is. He's back. We mentioned Punk's departure. Do you think we'll ever see him back in the WWE ring?
Punk?
Yes.
Well, the odds are we will, based on history. I mean, Punk will be the one, but I'm not like anyone else, and he may not be. I don't know. I don't know the answer. The only one who I thought would never come back is Bruno, and he came back. I don't want to say I thought that Bret would come back and wrestle, because I didn't think he would come back and wrestle, but I did think that Bret Hart would come back and go into the Hall of Fame. I mean, I always did think that would happen, just because, there were, or come back and, do the I understood the DVD thing. It's like they were going to do the Massacre of Bret Hart DVD, and Bret was going to come back because that would be their makeup. It's like, you don't do the Massacre and I come back, which is exactly what happened. Yeah. So with Punk, I mean, with Brock, I remember when Brock left, and it was just like, I'm never coming back, and they were just like, screw Brock. They were like, screw Brock, we're going to bury him and all this. And I'm just sitting here, and it's just like, God, I've been through this so many times with Steve Austin and all these guys, right? And it's just like, why are these two sides saying this stuff about each other? Because don't they know that he's coming back after his MMA career is over? He's coming back. Don't they know that? And Brock, I thought, Brock doesn't know it. Even though he doesn't know it, but goddamn, of course he's coming back, right? Nobody who's this big of a star, he's going to do his MMA, and whether he was a success or not, he's going to come back, and they're just wanting to bury him. It's like, oh, come on.
WrestleMania 29 also sees the debut of The Shield, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns, who would become a pivotal part of the roster and of weekly television, and actually be a launching pad, this stable, for three of, kind of the future stars of the organization. They have their ups, they have their downs, their starts and their stops in terms of pushes. But that night, Dave, they debuted at the Survivor Series the November before. That night, WrestleMania 29, when these three come in and have their first WrestleMania, which of the three did you think had the most upside?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I knew Roman Reigns was their guy, so I guess I would say I thought, because of how they would think, that it would be Roman Reigns. And that's still how they think, but it's certainly far more debatable. If you're asking me today which of the three is the most upside, gosh, I mean, really, really, really? I think it's Ambrose.
Yeah.
I think it's Ambrose, and I think Seth Rollins is 2 and Roman Reigns is 3. Because Seth Rollins was always the best wrestler of the three, but I was always worried about the star power or the presence, all of those other things that everything that's not having to do with bell to bell. I was always worried about Rollins, between the talking and everything like that. I mean, I just remember, and without saying who the guy was, we were talking about the best guys in developmental, and Seth Rollins' name did not come up. This was, whatever it was, probably, a year before they brought in the Shield, maybe 6-9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And in passing, the person goes, yeah, Seth Rollins is the best guy here, or the best wrestler here, but you and I both know that wrestling alone isn't going to get you to the big show. So it was almost like they didn't even know if he would make the roster.
Wow.
I mean, that's what it was. And plus, I think that they felt that he had an attitude problem. So I mean, I knew they weren't that high on Seth Rollins, but they acknowledged he was a great wrestler. But now, like when I've seen of Seth Rollins of late, I'm not, I mean, I think he's the best guy in the company right now. So Ambrose is a great talker, and that's very important. Great delivery on his promos and a good wrestler. And Roman Reigns, he's got a great look, but I think that again, I think they overrate the look aspect. And I think that if they think he's going to be the guy carrying the company, I think that it's going to be, I'm more every week. I'm feeling more and more. It's Kevin Nash 1995, where they think it's he's going to go in there and Rollins is going to be Shawn and he's going to be Kevin Nash.